Cocktail mixers, OpenAI, and make versus buy decisions. This is Ken Boyd with the Accounting Accidentally Substack channel. So a friend of mine told me you can get pre-mixed Manhattans and other cocktails at Friar Tuck's, the liquor store on Watson, and I was surprised. What? My initial reaction was thrilled, but then I remembered. I kind of like the process of making my own cocktails, so I passed on buying the pre-mixed version, although I hear they're as good as homemade. And this article is about a make versus buy decision and how OpenAI has a huge make versus buy decision on its hands, which we'll get to in a minute. So first of all, let's define make versus buy decisions. According to Investopedia, it's the act of choosing between manufacturing a product in-house or purchasing it from an external supplier. So let's say you operate a furniture manufacturer, and one of your products is a dining room table that includes small drawers, and each drawer has a metal handle that's screwed into the wood. So you purchase the drawer handles from a supplier, and prices have increased 15% over 18 months. And also, you have an increasing number of handles that don't meet your manufacturing standards, and they must be returned and replaced. Now, that doesn't cost you anything to get new handles when you return them because they're not of good quality, but it slows down your table production. You may be waiting for handles before you can finish a dining room table and ship it to a client. So rather than deal with high prices and quality issues, you might decide to make the metal handles yourself. But is that the right decision? Investopedia also points out some factors to consider before you stop buying a product and start to make it instead. And that includes, what are the labor costs? What about lack of expertise? Do you have the expertise to do it yourself efficiently? Storage costs, supplier contracts. Do you have an existing agreement with a supplier that you have to honor? And lack of sufficient volume. Maybe you can't produce enough. OpenAI has a $1 trillion make versus buy decision. And this $1 trillion question is because OpenAI relies on computer chips and a unique type of computer chip. And as the Wall Street Journal explains, there's a potential shortage of AI chips needed to produce systems such as OpenAI's ChatGPT. A lot of us use it. The biggest bottleneck in the production of AI chips has been in packaging, a manufacturing step that comes after the circuits are imprinted on the silicon. It's a complex process that requires a lot of precision to make these chips. So who makes them? Well, as it turns out, there are only 3 companies in the world capable of making the most cutting-edge chips, including the processors needed to power AI systems in large volume. Taiwan Semiconductor, Samsung, and Intel. There's only 3. Well, that sounds like a real problem because with just a few suppliers, that means higher prices and a bigger risk of chip shortages. So why not make the chips? And to that end, OpenAI's Sam Altman has held discussions with chip makers about joining with them and using trillions of dollars to build and operate new factories, along with investments in energy and other AI infrastructure. You've got to have electric, roads, bridges, climate control to make once you build the factory. You've got to have all that other stuff. You've got to have logistics to get raw materials into the factory and to get the completed chips out and shipped to people. Many of the world's largest chip makers, including NVIDIA, design their chips, but they outsource production to the other companies like Taiwan Semiconductor. In fact, NVIDIA, you may have heard of the media, is one of the best performing stocks in recent years. It's increased over 250% in the last 12 months, but they don't manufacture computer chips. They only design them, and then they outsource production to one of the big 3 that we just talked about. Okay, so what's the cost to make your own chips? Building a cutting-edge chip factory typically costs at least $10 billion, but even with that, the scale that OpenAI's Altman is discussing is extreme. As this analyst estimates, a little more than $1 trillion has been spent on chip manufacturing equipment in the entire history of the industry. And he's talking about taking that dollar amount that was the entire amount spent in the history of the industry and doing it in a short period of time just for AI chips. Now, there's some other factors to consider, like revenue potential. If you're going to spend $10 billion on a factory, do you have the revenue to justify the cost? Most AI analysts think so. It's a growing they're going to have a growing ability to generate revenue, so maybe we can justify the cost. Timeline, how long will it take to get up and running? on the factory. That impacts how long do I have to continue to buy from the existing 3 suppliers? And finally, hiring enough experts. There's uncertainties about finding engineers to operate a rash of new factories. Do we literally have enough experts to do this, to run the factory? Every business is making make versus buy that is making make versus buy decisions must deal with these same factors. So there's an important lesson. The most important stakeholder in your business may not be employees or customers, it may be suppliers. If the supplier can't make a quality product at a reasonable price and send it to you on time, you may be out of business. So if the furniture company can't get the door handles, they can't finish the tables. You can't make furniture without handles, and you can't build AI without the right computer chips. So think carefully before canceling a supplier and making a component part in-house. So that's as far as we'll get for right now. Remember, for other great content on accounting and finance, you can go to accountingaccidentally substack.com. Thanks.